Hello and good evening, listeners. Welcome to our weekly English program, Kaleidoscope. Listeners, in our today's program, we have a short story, An Ingenious Idea, written and narrated by Etisha Botre. Etisha has an MPhil in German. She enjoys minimalist lifestyle and simple pleasures of life, like a good morning run, meditation, reading, and painting in the sun. Etisha works as a freelancer and is the author of the book An Honest Present and Other Stories. So let us listen to her short story, An Ingenious Idea.
An ingenious idea. Mittu jumped happily on the slippery slanting steps of his house. Each time he descended, his toes clutched at the neck of his sturdy slippers. One of his hands tightly held a note of 10 rupees. His other hand clasped at the hem of his khaki shorts that were slipping from his thin hip bone. Mittu reached the final step and ran hurriedly to the milk vendor who was at the foot of the hills. Gattu Kaka's face lit up when he saw his little friend Mittu. "Shri Hari!" greeted Gattu Kaka excitedly. Mittu put his little thumbs in the belt loops of his loose shorts and danced his thumbs up and down, moving his bony hips rhythmically. "Arey wah, Mittu! Today full dabangish style, huh?" chuckled Gattu Kaka. Mittu grinned broadly at him, showing off his front 2 teeth, which resembled yellowing stalactites from a cave. He beamed expectantly at his elephantine friend and handed him a shabby 10-rupee note which had become moist from his firm grip. It was Monday. Mittu, along with his father, flocked at a Shiva temple with the rest of pious India. Balwant, Mittu's father, was a havaldar at a police station. Like most of the boys his age, Mittu idolized his father. He saw him in every hero on television, on every film poster, or even in a kusti match. To Mittu, Balwant was as dashing as the flamboyant cops from Bollywood cinema. He was as courageous as Bajirao Singham and as gallant as Bahubali. Every Monday, Balwant handed Mittu a 10-rupee note and sent him on an errand to bring him a packet of milk. Hopping on his father's bicycle, the father and son would ride down to their weekly ritual. Gattu Kaka flipped the moist 10-rupee note from Mittu and saw that he had unsystematically penciled 2 intersecting hearts on the Mahatma's bespectacled eyes. Gattu Kaka laughed heartedly at this image and put the tips of his stubby thumbs inside his pyjamas. He puffed his mouth with air to make him look heroic, or so he thought at least, and danced his thumbs on the protruding circumference of his pot belly. Mittu gesticulated as if he were also putting on a pair of sunglasses. He then slid his fingers swiftly over his hair like a hero, pulled up his shorts and imitated Gattu Kaka. 2 friends, one huge, the other tiny, sang "Hud Hud Dabang Dabang," and snorting with laughter, they bonded over an unreserved friendship. "Come on now, off you go." Gattu Kaka bustled away his pal and shoved the packet of milk in Mittu's tiny hands. Mittu carefully cradled the wet milk bag, and after every 2 steps he stopped to pull up his shorts so as to keep them falling off the waist. Balwant climbed down from his bicycle outside the Shiva temple and held Mittu by his frail waist and helped him down too. Then he went to a small washing place outside the temple. There he took a bath, but only with his clothes on. First he washed his hands, then he rubbed his feet vigorously one upon the other. Later he cupped water in his hands and slapped it on his face a few times, and finally put a few drops on his head. After all, that was the only exposed part that was left dry. Stepping out of the washing area, Balwant felt clean as new. He took out a checkered handkerchief from his pocket and rubbed his hands and face dry. Mittu had carefully observed his father performing the Monday rituals. So he also stepped into the small washing area, right feet first, just like his father, and started to rigorously rub his feet one upon the other. Then Mittu remembered his father had washed his hands first. So he stepped out of the washing area, jumped in again, his right foot first, and then perfectly imitated his father. Wash hands, rigorously rub feet, slap face, spill water on the head, etc. Balwant faced the temple and finished chanting some prayers with his palms folded to his heart. He looked around for his son and found him right beside him. Eyes closed, palms folded to his heart, and randomly moving his lips in O's and R's and V's and W's. Balwant petted his son's head affectionately and nudged him into the temple. There they waited behind a snake-long queue of men and women. Milk bags were sagging from their hands as flowers and coconuts weighed in their grasps, and trays of goods balanced on their arms. Every Monday, Mittu looked at the black stone figure of Shiva in awe. The white paste streaked over its front reminded him of white chalk over the blackboard at school. It left him intimidated. Mittu felt exposed in front of the deity. He wondered if the black stone with the white paste eyes had seen him copy an answer from his friend's exam paper. If he had seen him watching Gattu Kaka spray dark yellow urine on the wall beside his kiosk. Mittu had also practiced the same long spritz of urine on the wall at the back of his house. Only Mittu's urine was a much lighter shade of yellow, which had left him feeling glum. Mittu came out of his reverie when Balwant kneeled and whispered something in the bull's ears. The lady temple keeper then handed Balwant half a blade, and he slid open one corner of the plastic bag and emptied it over the shivling, murmuring a prayer. Mittu could not decipher the words, so he folded his palms and confidently muttered his well-versed O's and R's and V's and W's. Then the father and son postulated to the black stone figure. Once was a long prostration, the other short. Once was shapely, the others as flat as a school board. Later, both the father and son exited the temple in the same walking stride. On the bicycle, Mittu craned his neck backwards and looked up proudly at his father's face. The tender monsoon sun rays fell on Balwant's police badge and it shone brightly. Mittu was so proud to ride along with a movie-like muscular cop. He wanted to make him happy by talking about all the things he liked. So he decided to ask him about Lord Shiva. "Papa?" Mittu asked. His puppy face was beaming at his kusti hero. "Bol, Mittu beta." "Papa, why is there a pail of water dripping over Lord Shiva?" At this, Balwant began to speak rapturously. "I am very impressed, Mittu. I am very impressed," exclaimed Balwant. "That is a good question, a very good question." Balwant sounded like an overly doting grandfather who compliments his grandchildren unnecessarily for showing up once in a while at some family gathering. Mittu swelled with the compliment he had received from his attractive father. He had struck the right chord, he thought. "That is because, my boy, that is because," continued Balwant happily. Lord Shiva is the most powerful god, Mithu. He works hard, harder than I do. He meditates, he bears the burden of the entire earth upon him, Mithu. Balwant deliberately paused to assure if Mithu comprehended the gravity of Lord Shiva's power. The water keeps him cool at all times so he can strive for all of us incessantly. He's just so supreme, Mithu, so supreme. He's the Devon ka Dev. Mithu finished his sentence. Yes, Devon ka Dev, Mahadev, exclaimed Balwant delightfully. Har Har Mahadev, Har Har Mahadev, chanted Mithu jovially as his tiny hands sprinted up in the air. On a hot day in October, Mithu returned home to find his parents arguing vehemently. Their poisonous words and hateful arguments had raised the room's temperature as high as the flaming heat outside. Mithu's mother was a gangly woman and she was dodging the utensils thrown at her by her bulky husband. Balwant finally approached his shaky scapegoat-like wife and was about to wring her thin neck in his meaty hands when Mithu came to her rescue. Mithu armored his frail arms around his mother's shaky figure. He cried and begged, "Papa, please, Papa, please," squeaked Mithu. Fuming, Balwant went out into the veranda and sat on a divan. His chest was heaving with rage and nostrils were flaring with every breath. Mithu, like a scared mouse, watched the fiery beast of Balwant through the gaps of door hinges. As Balwant rocked back and forth, his ears twitched and the shoots of dark hair quivered from his red-hot ears. Later in the afternoon, when Mithu returned home after playing a game of marbles with his friends, he found Balwant snoring on the veranda cot. Black wool-like hair danced rhythmically up and down his chiseled chest as he breathed soundly. Mithu tiptoed into the house. He rummaged through his school bag and found what he was looking for. He emptied the shabby bag of crayons, threw its content on the floor, and held the bag under cool tap water from the kitchen sink. Mithu collapsed at the neck of the creased bag and started looking for a needle. Having found one in his mother's sewing kit, he took his dripping treasure to the veranda. There he held the innovated masterpiece over his father's sleeping head. Remembering the water pail on the shivling, Mithu pierced the wet bag in 3 places with the needle. Thin strings of water gushed and ran over Balwant's oily forehead.
So listeners, that was an ingenious idea written and narrated by Etisha Botre. Hope you enjoyed it. Do tune in next Wednesday for another exciting program. Until then, thanks for listening and please stand by as our next program follows.